April 29th, 1996. An unidentified man walks into a local cafe with a large blue sports bag in his hand. He decides to sit next to a group of people and conversate with them for a little bit before getting up and heading to the back of the cafe. It's there that he opens his sports bag to load up his weapons. And at that exact moment was when the most deadliest and disturbing murder in Australian history was about to take place. And unbeknownst to everyone in the cafe, things were about to get very bad, very quick. However, in order for us to discuss what transpired that fateful day, it's best if we go back all the way to how it even started, and how the man behind it all came to be. On May 7th, 1967, Maurice and Carleen Bryant would give birth to their son Martin. At the time, the couple was living in Hobart, Tasmania, which is an island located in Australia. From an early age, it was pretty obvious to Martin's parents that he was a bit different than most kids. He was very disruptive and sometimes violent towards people, especially the kids at his school, which caused him to suffer immense amounts of bullying as well. His teachers often described him as very distant from reality and unemotional, never really caring about the severity of his actions, which would not only show at school, but at home as well. One day in 1979, while playing with fireworks in his bedroom, Martin was injured and suffered severe burns for which he was hospitalized for. However, when he was interviewed about the incident on whether or not he'd continue playing with them, Martin didn't seem to care whatsoever about the damage he had caused to his room or to himself, and calmly said he would still continue to play with the fireworks regardless.
You'll be in here for a while longer, won't you?
Yeah, about a week.
Do you think you'll be playing with firecrackers anymore?
Yes.
Don't you think you've learned a lesson from this?
Yes, but I'm still playing with it.
This was only the beginning of Martin's disturbing and unremorseful behavior, and if only people had done more sooner, he wouldn't have gone on to commit one of the world's most devastating tragedies. Things didn't seem to get better as he went on into his teenage years. In 1983, Martin would be examined by a psychiatrist after leaving school. The psychiatrist stated, cannot read or write, does a bit of gardening and watches TV, only his parents' efforts that prevent further deterioration, could be schizophrenic, and parents face a bleak future with him, hinting at the fact that there was something clearly wrong with Martin and that his parents needed to step up their supervision if they wanted to save their child. The next few years after that seemed to be uneventful and not much going on with Martin, until the year 1987, when he meets a woman that would completely change the rest of his life. It's 1987 and the 19-year-old Martin Bryant is searching for some new customers for his lawn mowing services when he meets an elderly woman by the name of Helen Elizabeth Harvey, who had inherited the fortune of a lottery company. The two befriended each other, and Martin would begin to take care of not only her lawn, but other tasks around the mansion that she lived in. The two formed a close bond with each other with every day that Martin would come and work. The bond was especially important to Martin as it was the first time that someone other than his parents had accepted him for who he was, instead of just avoiding him and making him feel like an outcast. Now, although from the outside it seemed as if Helen and Martin's relationship was very close, things weren't all sunshine and rainbows behind the scenes. It was reported numerous times that Helen had told neighbors, one of these days, the little bastard is going to kill me. There were also times when Martin would lunge at the steering wheel while the pair would drive with each other, causing her to have 3 car accidents. As the years went on, Martin seemed to be doing pretty okay in his life, but one day on October 20th, 1992, Martin's life would take a dramatic turn for the worse when he was involved in a car crash with Helen inside the car with him. Martin would suffer severe neck injuries but later recover. But as for Helen, well, she wouldn't make it out alive as she had died instantly upon collision. To make things even worse for Martin though, almost a year after Helen's death, Maurice Bryant, Martin's father, who had been taking care of him and supervising his son to make sure he wasn't a danger to himself or others, would tragically take his own life. So now, Martin had lost his best friend / mentor and his own father, the main people in his life that treated him like a normal person. He was alone, and although there were some people in his life that tried to guide him in the right direction, it seemed as if the anger, grief, and vengeance was all building up in his mind. and he decided that he was going to plan out an attack against society, the society that he thought was against him, that would change Australia forever. By 1996, a 28-year-old Martin Bryant had gone to a point where nothing mattered anymore. In his mind, the only two options he had left was to either take his own life or go to jail. But he knew he wasn't going to do it without inflicting pain onto others. And unfortunately, he would do it on innocent people. On April 28, 1996, Martin Bryant would arm himself with a weapon and begin his reign of terror on a guest house called Seascape that belonged to a family by the name of the Martins. Some sources say that the reason behind targeting this couple was because they had bought the property his dad wanted to buy. So in Martin's mind, they were responsible for his father's suicide. Martin barged into their house, fatally shot the two, and stole their weapons as well as house keys. His plan was now set in motion, and unfortunately, innocent people were about to die. After killing his first victims, Martin decided to drive to the Broad Arrow Cafe in Port Arthur, Tasmania with a blue sports bag that he had stuffed the guns into prior. The cafe was pretty full, filled with people talking and drinking coffee, just enjoying the morning and going about their day. Martin decides to sit at a table and conversate with some of the people there as a means to look like he was just another normal guy. After he's finished, he decides to head to the back of the cafe and opens up the blue sports bag to load up his weapons for the attack. Not even a few minutes after, he starts shooting at random people just outside the cafe or taking a stroll, killing 12 people in the process, while injuring another 10. He continued his rampage by going to the other side of the shop and shooting at some more people, killing another 8. It was complete chaos, with dead bodies falling on the floors around the cafe. The somewhat peaceful morning had just turned into a day of massacre. As if that wasn't enough, as Martin began to flee the scene in his car, he continued to shoot at innocent civilians, ultimately ending 4 more innocent lives. While recklessly driving, Martin stumbled upon a woman with her 2 children walking on the sidewalk. He then stopped his car and opened fire on them, killing the mother and 1 child. As for the other child, she was able to flee and get away for a short distance before being tracked down by Martin and killed with a single shot. Martin then decides to steal a different car from a group of people, killing all 4 that were inside, drives over to a different car, kills one of the 2 passengers, and kidnaps the other as a hostage, then drives all the way back to the Seascape house he broke into not too long ago with the hostage in the back of the trunk. By this point, the police have already been alerted about Martin's rampage and have been chasing him down for a while now, eventually catching up to him at the Seascape home where he killed his first victims. Sooner or later, a deadly standoff with the police would ensue as they were trying to not only catch Martin, but also attempt to save the hostage he had taken with him. And well, the police were only able to do one of those 2. Unfortunately, Martin would decide to kill the innocent hostage, and the next day, he sets the Seascape house on fire, attempting to escape through the entire mess and suffering major burns to his body. Fortunately though, the police were able to catch Martin Bryant after 18 hours and end his reign of terror. But none of it could change the fact that 35 innocent people had lost their lives that day. Mothers, fathers, children, and all different people from all different walks of life, all at the hands of a guy who couldn't deal with his own pain and decided to inflict it onto others. However, this wasn't the end of Martin's story. Martin enters a dimly lit room with 2 male investigators who are eager to find out the reasoning behind the massacre. It's been a few months since he was captured, and the whole country of Australia have been in complete disbelief that a single person could have carried out such a violent attack. As Martin sits down with the men, they began to question him about all of the things he's done, but throughout it all, Martin showed no signs of remorse whatsoever. He smiled, laughed, and made jokes numerous of times throughout the entire interview, which is just chilling to watch. He continued to play dumb as if he didn't know who the killer was, until at one moment where he lets his guard down in the worst way possible.
I don't find it a very funny statement at all, mate, to be quite honest.
Martin would surprisingly plead not guilty at first due to his past diagnosis of mental illness and numerous disorders, but was later forced by his lawyer to plead guilty instead. ultimately landing Martin 35 life sentences or 1,000 plus years in prison, without the possibility to ever be free again. Regardless of his sentencing though, it couldn't bring back the lives of the innocent people that died that day. However, thankfully, it did spark change in the country by enforcing stricter and more safe gun laws across Australia, so that a massacre like Port Arthur would never happen again.